woven.
As we needed more reason to be alone. But through God, our actions will draw us closer than ever. And His Spirit will weave us together. Wearing the drapes another creates to keep us safe while we wait. It's only a distraction, so that's what's to happen. Is deep, more meaningful connection. Sliding won't hold us, and these threads can trust.
The power to bring us together.
Over oceans and motions will not stand frozen, but unfolded. Because together we are woven.
Well, good morning, everyone who's listening this morning. I hope you have your coffee and tea in hand. If not, go get them, because the next 20 minutes are going to be better if you have a coffee or a tea. I'm smart enough to realize that some guys this morning got dragged into this message on relationships. So let me talk to the guys for a minute. I promise not to hurt you. I promise to share stuff, hopefully, that'll make things go better for you. This is going to be good in the long run. I'm just passing on some good stuff that I learned, or we learned as husband and wife over the years. I remember my first time that Pam and I went to a marriage counselor. I was so arrogant, politely arrogant, of course, but I thought that I knew more than the counselor. I was convinced our problems were her fault. Anybody? And ladies, you may be thinking our problems are his fault. If he would just da-da-da-da-da. I also thought, that it dawned on me finally. I got smart and I said, if I know more than him, then why are we coming to him for help? If what we knew was working, we wouldn't be sitting in his office. So together we learned what we didn't know. And I just tell you that it works. And I'm hoping the same thing for you. So this month, we are focusing on relationship. And I realize there's a variety of people listening today in different places in relationship. Some are married and happy. Some are married and unhappy. Some are recently divorced. Some are parents. Some are children. Some are engaged. Some are single. But regardless of where you are, you're going to apply this message someplace. It may be to your marriage as husband and wife. It may be in a parent-child relationship. Maybe you have a friendship that's fallen apart, but you will apply it somewhere. So we're going to make this very broad, but the tools and principles apply to every relationship. So last week we talked about the need for grace in relationships. This week it's communication. Next week it's conflict resolution. The final week we're going to talk about friendship. And here's why this matters, right? Because we're ill-prepared. Many of us are ill-prepared or ill-equipped for a relationship. And a few of us, very few of us, had good role models. And the third reason is this: relationships are under attack. Our spiritual enemy, Satan, loves to destroy what God has created. So God created relationships. So let's reminisce for a little bit. God is creating stuff. He creates the earth, the sun, the moon, the land, the waters. He creates plants and animals. And he says after each creation, this is good. But then he said this is not good. When he created Adam, look what he said, right? The first scripture, he said this: it's not good for man to be alone. What was he saying there? He said he needs somebody. So he creates Eve. And then he says again, this is good. As a matter of fact, Eve is very good for Adam. And the ladies that are listening, this is a good time to hit the like button, because ladies are good in a man's life. But Satan's goal was to isolate us, separate us in relationships. Because when he gets us alone, he can do some of his most destructive, greatest work in our life. So our goal, right, is to talk about relationships, and as we think about them, hopefully learn some new stuff, and that if we apply it, it can take relationship to a whole new level. And I got to believe, everybody listening today, you want that, don't you? Husbands, nod your head, look at your wife and say, yes, dear, I love this stuff. Yeah, so here we go. Ready? Key thought of this series is this: real love isn't stumbled upon, it is built upon. Real love isn't stumbled upon, it is built upon. So paraphrase, great relationships take work. Now, I've heard this, and you've probably heard this too. I've heard couples say that the pinnacle point of our relationship was the wedding ceremony, and it was downhill from there. Why is that? I'll tell you why. Because we stopped doing what we did to get to the altar in the first place. And when we were dating, we can't get enough of each other. And the other thing is we have tremendous patience with each other. We are on our best behavior. We might fight, but we make up pretty quickly. And so we would hang out for 2 hours. I'd go home and call Pam on the phone. We talked for another half hour. Here's my prayer, that we could get back to what we lost. We could get back to what we lost. So Keith thought of this message as simply this: God's desire for us in relationship is for us to be teammates and not roommates. Think about that for a minute. So I want you to think back to the best team that you were ever a part of. It could have been a sports team, like a football team or a baseball team or cross country. It could have been the orchestra, the band, or the choir. It could have been the chess team. Maybe it was on a serve team at church, or maybe you went with a group of people to the mission field. What made that team so awesome? For some of us, it would be because we won a championship. For others, maybe we won a big game, or maybe we accomplished something together. But I would be willing to bet that the team that was so great and left an imprint in our minds was this. It was the team that was together. So let me take you back. 1992, the Cardinals in the Mel Ott Little League Baseball League. We were 18-0 that year. We had some talents, but it was balanced across teams because, believe it or not, in Mel Ott baseball, there was a draft. And so they actually rated every kid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And every kid got the same number of ones. Every team got the same number of 5. So it was balanced. But what made it work is that we had fun together. Head coach Mike Cherico, assistant coach Rick Rouse became friends. And it spilled over into the practices and to the teammates. We practiced hard, but we had fun. So much so that parents would get involved. They wouldn't just drop off their kids. Sometimes they would show up with cupcakes, and we'd stop practice and have cupcakes. Sometimes we broke into a touch football game during the middle of Little League baseball practice, and sometimes we had spontaneous water balloon fights. Winning was a byproduct of being good teammates. It works in every relationship. Solomon said it this way. Follow as I read this verse. It's our memory verse for today. 2 people are better off than one, for they can help each other succeed. If one person falls and the other can reach out and help, but someone who falls alone is in real trouble. Paraphrase, we are better together. The best teams in the world are the ones that communicate together. So when teams lose their way, it's often because communication breaks down. So I've been watching this on TV on Sunday nights. It's called The Last Dance. It's a documentary on the life and sport of a sports figure named Michael Jordan. His rise to being a superstar in the NBA with the Chicago Bulls, them winning several NBA championships. But at the end of one of those championship wins, there was trouble in River City between Michael and the owner. It started the day that Scottie Pippen, who was Michael's sidekick, went to the owner and he was underpaid. He was always in the shadow of Michael, but Scottie was probably one of the top 10 players in the NBA. But his salary had him notched at being paid as the 126th player in the NBA, and Michael was frustrated, and so he went to owner Jerry and talked to him about it, but the conflict never was settled. Jerry just stuck to his guns, and Michael's frustration kept rising, and one day he got into a conflict with Steve Kerr in practice, actually punched Steve Kerr in the face, and Phil Jackson, this cracks me up, Phil Jackson threw Michael Jordan out of practice. Can you imagine? Throwing Michael Jordan out of practice. What happened? Communication broke down. It happens to us. The number one reason for divorce or a friendship ending is a breakdown in communication. That's why this matters. So let's talk about communication just for a little bit. Different levels of communication, right? First one is this, right? Basic information. Just basic information. That's where, we talk about facts, figures, data, chit-chat. Honey, dinner is ready. Honey, could you take the kids to practice tonight? Or a waitress asking you, do you want French fries or onion rings with your meal? It's just basic information. The second one is partnership. This is, I need your help with this. Could you run to the store? Could you load the dishwasher, let the dog out? Or could you take care of supper tonight? It's partnership. The third level is conflict resolution, sharing problems and working towards solution. It sounds like this. We have to figure this out. How are we going to pay for this? When will we spend the time together next? Or when will we visit my family? So those first three are pretty basic, but then we move into 4, 5, and 6. This is true communication. There has to be connection. Connection, true soul connection. Not just, is it supposed to rain today, but answering the question, how are you doing? And looking the person in the eye and listening to their response. Number 5 is personal revelation. Personal revelation. True depth comes from us sharing our heart. This was a rough day. I was so excited about this. This is weighing me down. Where we debrief at the end of the day. I heard of couples that do it this way. They share the high and the low of their day with each other. It's personal revelation. The third one is intimate communication. This is where she shares. This is where he shares. It's the stuff we just share with close friends or a spouse. Now, a couple observations. All communication starts with 1, 2, or 3, the basic ones. And the second thing is this, true communication starts with 4, 5, and 6. But, right, if true communication, 4, 5, and 6, is not reciprocated, then can I tell you what happened? We go back to 1, 2, and 3. You know, it happens like this. All of us had a relationship where we're trying to go deep, and we get mocked or ridiculed, or we get a blank stare. And we go back to 1, 2, and 3. But if we go back to 1, 2, and 3, can I tell you what the problem is? A lot of those relationships don't last long. Yeah. So you maybe think, Pastor Rick, if communication is the key to making relationships last, what are some keys to effective communication? I am so glad you asked. Here are some of my thoughts. Ready? How do we communicate effectively? The first one is this. We have to recognize that good communication matters a lot. So Paul, right, he wrote to the churches in the New Testament, and this one he wrote to a letter to the church at Ephesus. In Ephesians 4:29, he said this, right? This is all about communication. He said, don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building up others according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. So let's leave that verse right there just for a minute. The first thing it says is, don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth. Translation, you got to get rid of sarcasm and put downs. Someone out there today is thinking, you just took away half my vocabulary. How about this, right? Only what builds up. Only what is helpful for building others up. What can I do to encourage them? Is this going to be helpful, or is it going to tear down? And then this one, according to their needs. Oh, time out, Paul. What are you really saying here, Paul? Are you saying that I need to put their needs above my needs? That's exactly what Paul was saying. But it will benefit you as well. He goes on to say that it may benefit those who listen. It'll benefit you as well. We can go home now, can't we? I mean, you are home. I'm sorry. How about if we just did this? Tape that verse to the refrigerator and work on it, and I'll see you next Sunday. I mean, that's a lot of work. And the other thing about communication is this. We need to schedule times for face-to-face communication. Let's think about it. How many meetings do you think that we have, the average person has in 1 week? Okay, we got the usual one, which are the team meetings with the people we work with. Then we have hallway meetings. Then we have phone calls. Then we have lunch table meetings. Then we have coffee at Starbucks meetings. Then we have Facebook, email, and Instagram. This survey said that we have an average of 62 meetings a week. So question, dun-dun-dun-dun. How many scheduled meetings do you have with the person that you love the most. Meetings are opportunities for communication, not a problem when we're dating because romance drives them. A year or two after the wedding, the number of meetings tends to decrease. We had 2 kids. I was bivocational. We were starting a new church in the early years of our marriage. Let's just say our meeting times were in decline. No. Here's the takeaway, right? And by the way, back then, if we did set a meeting time, usually it was to discuss a problem, and our skills weren't great, so we ended up fighting during those meeting times. Anybody? Yeah. So here's the takeaway. We need meetings. We have to put them on the calendar. So 3 types of meetings that we can have, right, in relationships. One is proactive, a meeting we schedule in advance. Let's talk Tuesday at 9 after we put the kids down. Another type is reactive, a meeting we schedule in advance away from the emotion of the moment. Schedule reactive meeting after the emotions die down. I've got to let this settle a little bit. How about we talk tomorrow at 9 o'clock? And then there's the third kind, and we've been here before, radioactive meetings. This meeting was never scheduled. This meeting was spontaneous. It took place when emotions were at a peak. Those don't end well. This is a fight waiting to happen. So here's a tip. Schedule one proactive meeting for 1 hour a week and bring the list. Don't let anything schedule over the top of that meeting. Now, some of you are thinking right now, that sounds like a 3rd level of hell. I thought the same thing. My tolerance for a proactive meeting was about 10 minutes, and Pam's need was 45. But the truth is this, when we're scheduled and actively taking time to process stuff, those meetings now could be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or 20 minutes. Conflict begins to take place on a regular basis. Now, next week, we're going to talk about conflict, but let me give you just a little preview. Conflict resolution has to happen on a regular basis because there is no such thing as a problem-free marriage. That's not even the goal. Can I tell you what the goal is? The goal is to become good problem solvers. That's the goal. So bring the list. Let's get after it. Second, recognize Satan's desire to destroy your relationship. Let me give you a picture of how Satan looks at relationships. He looks at it like a boxing ring. Yeah. He looks like it as a boxing ring. So what he wants to do, he wants to get the husband in one corner and get the wife in the other corner. And the only time that they come together is when the bell rings and they come in the middle to fight. And so some of you, I just described your life. It's a horrible way to live when you're coming together just to fight. So how does it change? Let me tell you how does it change. This is it. Someone steps out of the ring, walks down the stairs, walks around to the other person's corner, climbs up into the ring, and they decide together that they are going to fight the true enemy, which is the devil, and they're going to fight him together. Look what Peter said. He said this, stay alert. Watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. I put this in the notes. Your enemy is not your spouse. The enemy is the devil. Your spouse is not the enemy, the devil is. And so we have to learn how to get in each corner's husband, take the lead. Get out of your corner, walk around, get in her corner. Look at the real enemy of the relationship and decide that you're going to fight him together and give him a knockout punch. You say, how do we do that, Pastor Rick? Grace. This may be the day that you applied grace and you forgive and you let go of the offense, and you decide this, that the marriage is more important than the fight. Question, how do you end a tug of war? You let go of the rope. You just let go of the rope, and you decide you're on the same team together. The third thing is this, don't stop communicating. If we stop talking, we lose, and Satan wins. So communication 101, 2 golden rules of communication. The first one is this: 1 talks and 1 listens. It doesn't work when nobody talks, and it doesn't work when people talk at the same time, trying to talk over each other. No. 1 talks, the other listens. And after you've listened and validated what that person's feelings are and thoughts are on the issue, then you switch chairs and you become the talker and they become the listener. You know, it may be that you come to a different conclusion and have different perspectives because of their perspective, people can have different opinions about the same situation. And the second rule is this: if I'm in the listening chair, I hold my opinion in and I do what I call reflective listening. Here it is. Reflective listening is validating that other person's opinion. Here's a validating phrase. If I heard you right, this is what you're thinking. And in our culture, you keep validating until you get the nod of the head. When you get the nod of the head, you know you validated, because in our culture, when we've been heard, we nod our head, you know. And if it's a hesitancy, we say, no, tell me more. See, remember when you're listening, this is what you're saying. Babe, you're worth fighting for. And I'm not going to fight you. I'm going to fight with you against the enemy. Last thing is get help if communication breaks down. There is no shame in that game. Husbands, lay down your pride. Get some help. Wives, lay down your bitterness and get some help. For Pam and I, more than once, we've had seasons in our marriage where we needed help. And I am forever grateful for those people that walked us through some dark days of our relationship. I put this in the notes. Never been easier to find help. Never been harder to lay down our pride. Now, just for the record, if you need help, can I tell you something? We can help with a referral to a counselor. We can even help pay for some of the sessions if you don't have insurance. We typically offer 1 marriage growth group a year. And then this one, right? This one. Smart people get help. When I do premarital counseling, one of the last things I do when they leave my office after I've said everything I know, I look at them and say, if you ever get stuck, make sure you come in for help. If I see you walking together down to the hallway to my office, can I tell you what I'm thinking? They're really smart because they're seeking help. If you ask me what drives me in ministry, I'll tell you what it is. I don't want Satan to win. If you ask me what gives me motivation to speak every week or several times a year to you about the truth about God, I'll tell you what it is. I want more in heaven and less in hell. If you'd ask me what drives me to do counseling, it's more people staying together than are splitting up. So Joe and Sally. Sally is someone I've known since middle school in the other church that I pastored. Calls me out of the blue 2 weeks ago. Asks, are you still counseling couples? I mean, now she's in her 30s and she has 2 children and she's married. And she said, I said, yes. And she says, can we talk? And I do my first telecoaching counseling session where I am literally taking picture of documents I use to help people in counseling and texting them to the couple over the phone. They decide they want to meet again. I send a worksheet on communication to them before we would meet for them to do and work through. She gets the communication. The next day she texts me and she says, he's moving out. He wants a separation. It broke my heart. They have 5 years into this thing. They have 2 children. I texted them both and said, I'm praying for you. You need to know you can fix what's broke with some help. 3 days later, he texted me It says, Pastor Rick, I almost blew it by leaving. I'm staying. I need help. I want to pray before I finish, but I want to ask you a question. How is your connection with God? You'll need his help if you're going to fix some of these issues. The best gift you can give any relationship is a strong relationship with God. How's your connection to God? If it's not good, take time to reconcile. You say, how do I reconcile with God? It's a prayer. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me. Now, some of you, those words needed to be spoke to a spouse or a friend. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please forgive me. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for this morning. I pray for healing, Lord. The purpose of this is just not information, Lord. It's to bring healing where hurts are. And I pray you begin to restore what's broke. Help people see how you can help them, God. Put them in touch with people that can bring them freedom in these areas that are binding them up. And I pray these things and for them and for us, that our relationships would be better than ever. In Jesus' name, amen.